we are recording. Welcome, everyone. We're so glad you're here. I'm going to put some information about closed captioning and links in the chat. So good afternoon, students, employees, and community members. I am Erin Cunningham Ritter, representing the College of Arts and Sciences Be Well program. And I am very pleased to welcome you to this Let's See You Well event titled Protein, Is It For Me? Pro tip, it's for everyone, featuring Dr. Nicole Stob with the College of Arts and Sciences Department of Integrative Physiology. Before we begin, please note that closed captioning is available by clicking the live transcription button in the menu bar. Also, like I said, this session will be recorded and I'll post it to the Let's See You Well page on Be Well in just a couple of days. And we've left some time for question and answers at the end of the session, so feel free to be popping items in the chat and I'll help to facilitate Q&A at the end. And you can check out more wellness resources, research, and workshops at our website. And now it's my great pleasure to introduce our Let's See You Well Expert of the Month. Nicole Stob grew up in Minnesota, earning her bachelor's degree in nutrition science at the College of St. Benedict. She then completed her master's degree in exercise physiology and her doctorate degree in nutrition science at Colorado State University. Since graduating, she's been involved with clinical research focusing on the sympathetic nervous system and adipose or fat tissue biology. She now teaches full-time for the Department of Integrative Physiology here at CU Boulder. Outside of her teaching and research, she has a wide range of interests and looks forward to winter every year as she enjoys snowboarding and Nordic skiing. In addition, she also enjoys running, knitting, and traveling. Now, without further ado, I'm pleased to introduce Dr. Nicole Stob for her presentation titled Protein, Is It For Me? Pro tip, it's for everyone. Nicole, welcome. Glad to have you.
Thank you, Erin. Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to chat with everybody about protein. I'll just get my slides going here. Yeah, so thank everybody for tuning in. It's exciting to see this many people that are interested in protein. Protein is definitely a hot topic within nutrition. That's what I'll focus on today. I mean, we'll talk a little bit about carbohydrate and fat as well, but just kind of in passing. So maybe I can do a 3-part series and do all the macronutrients. But protein, like my title says, it's for everyone, right? So let me just talk a little bit about what proteins are, and we'll talk a little bit more about how much protein do we actually need based on who we are, and then how can we get that protein, and a few other things as well. So the thing about proteins, like I always tell my students, is they're everywhere. They're everywhere in the body. So we need to be consuming protein. You know, a lot of people will come to me and say, oh, what supplement can I take for thicker hair or for this or that? And I say, well, how much protein are you getting? I don't know. I said, well, let's figure that out first, because you've got to give your body these building blocks, these proteins. So they're found in all the cells of the body, excuse me, critical components all over the place. If we look at functions, I'll just go ahead and put all these up here. My point being, there's a lot of functions, right? So cell growth, repair, maintenance, the balance of fluid electrolytes in the body depends on protein, pH balance, so acid-base balance, storage of nutrients, transport of nutrients around the body. So we're transporting iron in the blood, right? We need a protein called hemoglobin to do that. Compounds such as fibrin and collagen. Collagen is a pretty hot protein these days. We find that throughout the body as well. Proteins can be enzymes, so things that make reactions happen. They can be hormones like insulin. We'll look at a picture of insulin in just a bit. Antibodies, we're been talking a lot about antibodies and the immune system in the past few years. So we've got to have proteins for that. Neurotransmitters, and it also can be an energy source. So proteins, like carbohydrates, have 4 calories per gram. Fat has 9 calories per gram. The thing is, we want to use carbohydrate and fat for energy if we can, and save protein for all of these other functions that I just pointed out. So yeah, we can use protein for energy. Absolutely. It gives us calories, but we want to save say protein for those other functions if we can, which means protein is important, but it's also important to get enough carbohydrate, get enough fat in your diet, so you're getting enough calories or energy, and then protein can be used for all these other things. So let's just break down proteins a little bit. So proteins are made up of something called amino acids. You may have heard of amino acids, especially if you're an active person. Sometimes people will supplement with protein or with specific amino acids. So these amino acids are building blocks of proteins. We put a bunch of amino acids together. Essentially, we get a protein, okay? So each amino acid is attached to another by a peptide bond. So I'm getting a little chemistry-ish here, but just understanding that we're putting all those together and then putting them in a certain configuration to make specific proteins. So when we look at amino acids, I'm going to go ahead and put all of this up here so I can kind of compare and contrast these. We've got something called essential amino acids, something called non-essential amino acids. So it's important to make the distinction between these two because essential amino acids our body cannot make, but non-essential amino acids our body can actually make. So the way that I like to remember it is essential amino acids. It's essential that I get them in the diet because my body can't make them. So they're essential amino acids. Non-essential amino acids, we definitely get them in the diet, but our body can make them if need be, okay? So we'll focus a little bit more on essential amino acids simply because we have to get them from food. So if we're lacking a certain amino acid, a certain essential amino acids, our body can't make it and say, oh, we'll just make some extra. We've got to get it from food somewhere, okay? So 9 of the 20 amino acids are essential. So nearly half of those we have to be getting in the diet. And really, we do want to be getting those non-essentials in the diet as well, because that's the best place to be getting them. Our body can make the non-essentials, but if we can get all of those amino acids in the diet, that's going to be the best thing. And we'll talk about how to do that. So just as an example, here's insulin. Each of these little round circles is a different amino acid. So you can see proteins are pretty complex, and they can be much more complex than insulin. So insulin is a protein that is made in our body by the pancreas, and it helps regulate our blood sugar or our blood glucose levels. So when we eat carbohydrate, insulin will be produced. It'll help regulate that blood glucose or that blood sugar. So this is just an example. Here's kind of a fancy picture of it that you can see a 3D. And I put the 3D on here because that matters too. A protein has to have a certain 3D configuration to actually function like it's supposed to. So my whole point being that I've got all these amino acids. We need to be getting all those amino acids either in the diet or being made by the body to make these proteins that are in our body as well. Excuse me, I have a bit of a frog in my throat these days. So needs and recommendations. So in general, we give protein recommendations in terms of body weight. So any thoughts, and Erin, I don't know if you want to just look in the chat if people want to answer this. Why would we give protein recommendations in terms of body weight? Any thoughts on that? Let's see if I can see the chat. There we go. Okay.
It's
So Noel's saying it.
Noel says, yep, we've got some coming in. Noel
Okay,
says, takes more energy to keep more weight fed in quotation. Melissa says, muscle mass and other mass needs the protein to function.
Yeah, so all of these are kind of on the right track. And then I see Stephanie saying protein needs are proportional to body weight. Jen Goodwood, energy source. Yeah, so absolutely we need it for an energy source, right? It can provide us calories. But think about body weight. Think about what our body is mostly. It's mostly protein, right? So our muscle mass, we need protein for that. Even other mass, like Melissa's saying, we need protein to be building those things, to be repairing those things. So some of us are bigger than others, right? And exactly. So Aiden, I hope I'm saying that right. I apologize if I am not. Repairing cells and their components. So we are constantly using protein in the body. So if we have someone who is 250 pounds and we have someone who's 150 pounds, we can assume that they're probably going to have very different levels of protein in the body, whether it's muscle mass or organ tissue or whatever it is. We've got to give the body the appropriate amount of protein to maintain, repair, and do all those things that you guys just mentioned. So that's why carbohydrate and fat, we don't say you need a certain amount per kilogram or per pound. Protein, we do. Okay. And I'm going to speak in terms of kilograms because that's typically how the scientific community talks about all of this. In just a second, we'll talk about converting what we typically think of in pounds, right? Our body weight, about converting that to 2 kilograms. So the sedentary individual, sedentary meaning someone who doesn't really do habitual physical activity. So they get up in the morning, they get ready, they go to work, maybe they sit behind a computer all day like most of us do, right? You get home in the evening, you watch Netflix, you have some dinner and you go to bed, and then you rinse and repeat, right? So for what we say for sedentary individuals is 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram per day. That's really kind of a minimal amount, and that's been a number that we've always kind of said that's what most people need. Now we know that special, or I shouldn't say special, but certain populations need more protein than that, and there's some argument out there that most people need more protein than that. But as I kind of hinted at in my preview, most of us get enough protein. It's pretty easy to get protein in some situations. So what I'm going to do is just show you some of these comparisons. So I'm going to look at athletes. Certain athletes need a lot more protein than we would recommend for sedentary individuals. So someone who's a recreational athlete, maybe the weekend warrior, they go out on the weekends, you're hiking, you hit the gym maybe once or twice a week, maybe you need a little bit more protein, right? Middle distance, so someone who's maybe a runner or a cyclist, we see a lot of those around Boulder, right? 10K runner, that's 6.2 miles, a little bit more protein, but you can see now we're getting to almost double what we're recommending for sedentary individuals. Someone who's trying to build muscle, maybe it's a strength athlete, or maybe it's someone who just wants to add muscle mass. Maybe they're, have always had a low body weight. They would like to add some muscle mass so they're stronger. They have a higher body weight. Then we're bumping it up even farther, maybe even as high as 2 grams per kilogram. So you can see some people definitely need more protein. If we have an athlete who's kind of maintaining what muscle that they've gained, similar. And then ultra endurance athletes, this is a big range because ultra endurance athletes are oftentimes in different training phases, but they can even go up to about 2 grams per kilogram per day. Okay. There are a lot of research has shown that for most people, 2 grams per kilogram per day is kind of where we max out, right? That's an average. So some people can maybe even get up to 3 grams per kilogram per day and still be benefiting. When I say benefiting, I mean gaining some muscle mass. Usually we're going to see that in bodybuilders, more serious strength athletes. So for most of us, really 2 grams per kilogram is probably going to be the max that we need and can probably benefit from. But you can see that 2 grams, that's a lot more than this, right? The 0.8. But keep in mind, most of us kind of blow the 0.8 out of the water. Most of us get more than that anyway, so we're ahead of the game. So one thing I want to point out is that older adults, these are good. I'm going to close the chat so I don't get distracted because I'm seeing good questions in the chat. So older adults, and when I say older adults, we're usually define that as about 50 plus, okay? And we always, in the past, we always said, well, they just need 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram. But then there was more look at this and it's like, well, maybe a little bit more. And then there's more research that says maybe a little bit more, maybe even up to 1.8 grams of protein per kilogram per day. So there's definitely an argument for almost everybody having more than the 0.8. And then as we age, we really want to try to maintain that muscle mass that we do have. And there's no question that after 50, that's not that old, right? But after 50, you could still build muscle mass. You can hit the gym. We've seen that in 70, even 80-year-olds where they've added muscle mass when we started them on a very careful, planned strength training regimen. So as an older adult, if someone's concerned about that, maintaining your muscle mass is so important. We need tricep strength to push up out of our chair, right? We need strength just to do any kind of activity of daily living. So maintaining that is important. So looking at these higher numbers is probably a good idea. Okay. So what I want you to kind of think about is yourself. Where would you categorize yourself? Maybe some of you guys in here are these athletes that are constantly passing me on the trail when I'm out running, and you're just these superstar endurance athletes. Where would you fall? Maybe you're someone who is sedentary, but you think, oh, maybe I should bump it up a little bit. Maybe you're one of those weekend warriors. So kind of pick a number for yourself, what you think might be best for you. And the thing about nutrition is there's never, I don't want to say there's never a right or a wrong answer, but there's not an answer for everybody, not the same answer for everybody. Everybody is different. So every one of you is probably going to pick a different number. Okay. So I'm just going to look at these as well. So for a lot of you, maybe this range up to 1.8 or 1.2 to 1.8 is maybe where you want to choose, and you can just kind of see what comes out. So, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to that previous slide, but if you have a calculator, if you have your phone, let's just do a quick calculation, just kind of a fun thing to do. So you can take your body weight in pounds. If you don't know it, that's okay. Just kind of, a general guess. Some people don't weigh themselves and that's no big deal, but take your body weight in pounds, divide by 2.2. That's going to give you your body weight in kilograms. So once you have your weight in kilograms, you kind of have a little bit of a tool here. So I have, as an example, someone who's 200 pounds. They are 91 kilograms. We divided by 2.2. And then whatever that kilogram weight is that you came up with, multiply that by your chosen protein number. So in this case, someone is 91 kilograms. We multiply by 1.2, and whenever I have PM, that's my little shorthand for protein. And then this person should be consuming about 109 grams of protein per day. And we'll talk about these numbers in just a second so they make a little bit more sense. Like, what does 109 mean? Where do I get 109 grams? I've seen someone in the chat talking about, getting a certain amount from certain foods. So let me give you just a couple seconds to look at that, kind of calculate that if you want to. And I'll tell you that there's going to be protein calculators all over Google if you want to look at those. You certainly can, but I really think it's kind of a good thing to kind of understand, okay, here's how I got to this number. Here's what I'm looking at. And then if you want to change those numbers, if you feel like, okay, I'm going to change these numbers, I'm going to start training for a marathon, that type of thing. If those numbers change, then you can adjust that too. Okay. So here's kind of a cheat sheet, if you will. I pulled this from Examine, which is an online kind of database, I guess you could say, for nutrition information. But if you don't have a calculator, you can't do this in your head, totally understandable. But here's your body weight in pounds with the body weight in kilograms. We're just going in 25-pound increments. But this is giving you a range of protein intake. So this is between 1.2 and 1.8 grams of protein. So let's say that someone is 175 pounds. They're 79 kilograms. They should have between 95 and 143 grams of protein. And I should say that, everybody's intake is going to vary day to day. There might be some days it's like, I woke up late, I didn't have breakfast, I was teaching or I was working through lunch and I had dinner and I end up having 60 grams. That's okay, right? It doesn't mean that your muscle mass is going to start to decrease after a day or two. It's fine. Just think of it as an average. So over a period of several days, I should have about, if we want to kind of go right in the middle of this, maybe 120 grams of protein a day. Okay. So looking at those numbers, and again, I'm going to look at this. I'll come back to that previous slide. So how much protein do we actually get in foods? And of course, I don't have time to go through this list and tell you everything, what every food contains. But what I want to point out is different food groups, just to give you an idea of how much protein you can get. So this is in certain food groups, and this is one serving of those foods. So let's start out and look at the plant-based protein sources. So grains, vegetables, beans, nuts and nut butters, and then soy. So what you can see is on average, let's say maybe 5 to 6 grams per serving. So not bad, right? But kind of as a preview, if someone is a vegetarian or a vegan, you can certainly get enough protein, but you got to work at it a little bit harder. Okay, you've got to think about getting that protein. Let's contrast that with dairy, animal-based, of course, right? But we also have a lot of plant-based milks these days that look a lot, in their nutritional profile, look a lot like dairy milk. So you can get a similar amount of protein. So maybe 11-ish grams per serving. And that's usually an 8-ounce serving. So if you have a bigger glass of milk, you can double that, right? And then here's where we get the bang for our buck. And I'm never one to say that everybody needs to eat meat. like I've said, there's no perfect diet for everybody. Some people do great on a vegan diet. Some people are going to look at me like I have three heads if I say the word vegan, right? They're going to be like, no way, not going to happen. And that's okay. We can get enough protein on any of these diets, but it is easier if you're consuming meat simply because it's a more dense source of protein. Okay. Beef, poultry, fish, pork, right? So 20-ish, 20 plus. This is for, like, for beef, for example, this is for 3 ounces. 3 ounces is about the size of the palm of your hand or a deck of cards. So if we go to a regular restaurant, anything, any ideas on how many ounces a burger usually is? You guys can throw it in the chat, just some guesses. How many ounces? Or you can say if you think it's more than, okay, yeah, yeah. Yeah, you guys are on. My students are always like, I think it's like 2 ounces. And I'm like, no, it is not. Um, so anywhere between 4 and 8 ounces, and oftentimes it's a half pound, which is 8 ounces, right? So remember, these are 3 ounces. So let's say that, let's make it easy. Let's say it's a 6 pound. Let's go with Donna's. Let's say it's a 6 ounce, not pound. That would be a large burger. A 6 ounce burger, you could double this then. So say that you're getting 40 grams of protein, bam, in that burger. So you can see that, yeah, if you're consuming meat, it can be pretty easy to knock out that protein. But if you're consuming greens, vegetables, beans, etc., maybe some alternative milks, like someone pointed out here in the chat, some of them don't have a ton of protein, but some of them will have it added. You can still get enough protein. You just have to work at it a little bit harder. That's all. And that goes with any diet when you're trying to get certain nutrients. It's like you change your diet, you got to make sure, you're going with, you're doing that research that you need to. Okay. And then finally, supplements. So I don't know if we'll have time to talk about supplements today, but we certainly can if we need to. Just going to grab my phone so I know what time it is. Supplements, and basically when we say a supplement, like a protein powder, and usually this is per scoop. That's how these protein supplements are oftentimes measured. So whey and casein are from milk. They are the two proteins that we find in milk. You can see that a serving of those, a scoop of those, is a pretty good source of protein as well, 20 plus grams, right? Soy protein, if someone's opting for a plant-based, is maybe a little bit more, but very similar. These are not all the options for protein supplements out there. In the last probably 5 to 10 years, it has exploded with a lot more protein supplements, especially plant-based protein supplements. And I'll talk about that a little bit later as well. So this is kind of looking at where you're getting protein from. And again, any diet, you can get enough protein. Some of them, you just have to work a little bit harder, right? But once you get used to it, that's, you can get that protein, okay? So as I've been saying, there's a lot of foods other than meat that can be good protein sources. Okay, it's not as though you need to sit down and be a carnivore to get enough protein. Dairy products can be good sources. Legumes are great sources, also good with fiber. Eggs are a good source. Nuts, whole grains. So those all vary, like we just saw in their protein content, but they have protein, so they can be good contributors. In the last, several years, we've also had a lot of what some people like to call fake meat, right? Pop up. There's, the fake meat, if you want to call it that, has been around for a while, but we've had this explosion of things that are available. I mean, you go into the grocery store and it blows my mind that there's always a new brand of chicken nuggets that are plant-based or a burger that's plant-based, right? So a lot of plant-based things. So we've got corn. It's made from fungus or mushrooms. Quinoa, this isn't new, but it's more new to us in the US. It's been around for millennia, especially in South America. But that's a great protein source as well, kind of fun to cook with. Amaranth is another one. And then things like Beyond Meat and Impossible. These are all decent sources of protein. Keep in mind that with some of these, like corn, Impossible, Beyond Meat, they're processed foods. So they're not like beef where it's coming and it's just kind of beef. That's processed a bit as well, but these are processed foods. So if you're trying to cut down on processed foods for various reasons, consider that. But at the same time, for some individuals, these may be good, viable protein sources. Okay. And from the ones that I've tried, they're not bad, right? They're a lot better than they used to be 20 years ago when you would be like, whoa, that tastes like cardboard, and I got to put a lot of ketchup on this to get it down. But now I mean, it's amazing what they've done with some of these things. All right, let me go back. And I apologize that I'm skipping around, but I just kind of wanted to get to some things first. So with aging, one of the things that we're concerned about is sarcopenia. And I'm just quoting from an article. Sarcopenia is the progressive loss of muscle mass and function and associated with various adverse health outcomes. We tend to be concerned with sarcopenia when we talk about aging. And most people are going to experience some degree of sarcopenia. We certainly can work against it by being active, by doing a lot of strength or resistance training. But we do see a lot of people that have sarcopenia when they're aging. The number is pretty broad here, and I've seen estimates that are even wider. But 10 to 16% of elderly worldwide are affected. And that prevalence really varies depending on that definition that's used. But that gives you an idea. This isn't like, oh, 1% of the population. This is a very significant thing. And as I mentioned before, with sarcopenia, we're losing the ability to do activities of daily living. If your tricep strength is not good, you can't push up out of that chair. You can't push up out of that chair, and it's really hard to do that. It takes a lot of effort. You don't go to the kitchen as much. You're not getting proper nutrition as much. You can't get to your car and drive to the grocery store to get healthy foods. I mean, it translates to so many things. So it's not just a matter of, oh, this person isn't strong, but it may affect their well-being, their nutritional status. So we see, as I mentioned, sarcopenia is associated with the high risk of adverse health outcomes. Just a few things. I mean, there's a huge long list, but we see more post-operative complications if someone's in for a major surgery, longer hospitalization. So just having that ability to do activities of daily living is very, very important. And what increases the risk of sarcopenia, it's not just malnutrition or not consuming enough protein and other nutrients, but being physically inactive. Smoking is on every risk list that we talk about. It seemingly, if someone sleeps a lot, so they're not bearing a lot of weight, they're not moving their muscles, they're not going through those activities of daily living, and diabetes as well. So sarcopenia is kind of in the background there, and that's one reason why I'm talking about protein and aging, because we want to try to counteract sarcopenia so that we can continue to be active, continue to maintain that strength. And as we age, of course, you're going to lose some strength, but you want to maintain enough so that you can do those activities of daily living. All right, let me go back to where I was. So looking at proteins, let's come back to this idea of essential and non-essential amino acids. So remember, essential amino acids are those that we have to get in the diet. It's essential to get them in your diet because your body cannot make them. Non-essentials, your body can make them, but we also can get them in the diet. So we have two types of proteins. They're called complete and incomplete proteins. Some people call them high quality and low quality. I shy away from that terminology because a low quality protein doesn't mean it's a low quality food. It just means that it doesn't have these essential amino acids, okay? So a complete protein, it's complete because it has sufficient amounts of all 9 of those essential amino acids, right? So this is typically animal-based proteins. So we're building up the points for animal-based proteins because we're saying, oh, it has a lot of protein, it's a complete protein, has all 9 of those essential amino acids. That doesn't mean that plant-based proteins aren't good, right? That simply means that we got to do a little bit more work, like I said, that's all. So animal proteins are complete proteins, whether it's milk, meat, right? You're going to get all 9 essential amino acids. So it's kind of like you get a lot of bang for your buck, right? You get it all there. There are some exceptions, and soy is one. Soy is obviously plant-based. It loves to look like an animal-based protein in everything it does. So it's kind of like, hey, I'm a plant, but really I act like an animal-based protein, okay? Yes, there's always controversy about how much soy we should be consuming. Most studies say that a moderate intake, unless someone is at risk for, like a female being at risk for breast cancer, et cetera, we don't want to go there then. But for most individuals, moderate intake is going to be fine. Quinoa, we already mentioned, the fun little seed that we can cook with. That's also a complete protein. Chia seeds. So chia seeds are now, mainstream for the most part, but it's the same stuff that you grew with your chia pet when you got that for Christmas when you were 8. Um, so we were sprouting all those chia pets and didn't realize this is super healthy. But so now the chia pet people do sell chia seeds for consumption on their website along with their chia pets. So if you ever get a chia pet, you know that it's a healthy pet, right? But maybe just let it be and eat your own chia seeds. Hemp is another pretty close to complete protein as well. That's kind of come onto the scene in more recent years. So these are complete proteins. You get all those essential amino acids, more bang for your buck. Let's contrast that with incomplete. Some people say low quality. Again, I don't like to say that because it's not a low quality food. It just means it does not have sufficient quantities of all those essential amino acids. Okay? So if someone is missing essential amino acids in their diet, what can happen over time? Growth may be compromised if someone is in a growth phase. So if we're talking about a child, a pregnant woman, etc., health may be compromised simply because you can't synthesize some of the proteins. That's all. Okay. So people say, well, okay, I'm a vegetarian, I'm a vegan. Am I just kind of out of luck? No, absolutely not. So plant proteins are typically incomplete, right? They don't have all sufficient amounts of all 9 essential amino acids. A lot of them are really close, like pea protein is really close, but it's lacking a little bit. But we have something called complementary proteins. So complementary proteins are 2 incomplete protein sources. Together, they supply all 9 essential amino acids. So what's really, I just think this is the coolest thing. A lot of foods that go together anyway are complementary proteins. So if you were to eat them together, like beans and rice, boom, there's all 9 essential amino acids. Beans and rice is a staple in a lot of cultures, right? And it makes sense. It tastes good together, yada, but sometimes it's like, that came together for a reason, right? Not just because it tastes good, but nutritionally it makes sense. So those complementary proteins are important to look at. So what I've been talking about, a vegetarian or a vegan diet, absolutely you can get enough protein, but you just need to hunt around more. Okay. So based on this, the best thing for someone who is vegetarian or vegan to do is eat a variety of protein sources throughout each day, a variety. And in general, variety is always good in any type of diet, right? But getting that variety means that you're probably getting all those essential amino acids throughout the day. You don't need to eat them together at the same meal like beans and rice. If you do, great. But within a 24-hour period, try to eat that variety of protein sources, and you're probably going to be getting all those essential amino acids. It's not guaranteed, but certainly it's something that the variety is going to be a better thing. So let me give you a few more examples. So looking at legumes, grains, and nuts and seeds, what we call limiting amino acids. So these are the amino acids that are not, the essential amino acids that are not high in those foods. But then we have complementary foods that have high levels of those amino acids. So eating them together or within the same 24-hour about period will give you all those essential amino acids. So red beans and rice, hummus itself, peanut butter and bread, corn tortilla and beans, cashews with tofu. So things you would eat together anyway, right, can give you all those essential amino acids. So, and if we have time, we'll talk a little bit more about vegetarianism. But when someone starts off as a vegetarian, sure, they may not be getting enough protein. Maybe not, they may be missing some other nutrients. But just like with any diet, it just takes some time to figure it out, right? And not eating enough protein for a few weeks, it's going to be okay, right? You're going to figure it out, but it just takes a little bit of extra work. And then I've talked to many vegetarians. Oh, I've been a vegetarian for 10 years, for 20 years, for 5 years. They have it down. They know what they need to be consuming, and it really does work well. Yep, if you throw meat in there, you're going to get more protein. You're going to get those essential amino acids, but you don't have to, right? So people who are meat eaters, it is a little bit easier. But if you prefer a plant-based diet, that's totally fine too. You can get what you need. Okay, there are some vitamins that I'll mention that probably a good idea to supplement with, but for the most part, we can typically get what we need from food. And it's always better to get nutrients from food versus supplements. There's very few exceptions. I always say, I say food first, supplements second. Try to go with food and then supplements. Okay, so protein digestibility is another issue. And some of you guys may have heard of this. This is also a determinant of protein quality. Again, the quality of the protein, not so much the food, right? So this is another point for animal-based proteins. They're more digestible than plant-based for the most part. Again, that's not to say don't eat plant-based proteins. You're still going to digest a high amount of it, but just make you aware, okay, animal protein sources are highly digestible. 90% of those amino acids are digested and absorbed into the body typically. And then soy pops in again. Soy, the plant slash incognito animal protein. Okay. Legumes. College students love Chipotle. I think a lot of people like Chipotle. I'm always like, get more beans. I talked to someone the other day who's like, I usually skip the beans. I'm going to get the beans. Great source of protein, great source of fiber, any type of legumes, beans, peas, that type of thing. They're just really good, healthy foods to be consuming. Yes, for some people, you don't want to have too many servings of beans because you might upset yourself and those around you. But in general, great food to be consuming. So lower quality protein, only meaning lower digestibility. And what you can see is the digestibility it's not like it's 10%. So grain and vegetable protein sources, some of them are pretty high, as you can see in this number, but they are just a little bit lower. So again, plant-based proteins, get a variety, get all those essential amino acids. And then typically for vegetarians and vegans, we bump up that number a little bit, that point, or 1.2 or whatever grams per kilogram, just because you're not going to typically digest and absorb as much. And you may be missing some of those essential amino acids. Getting a little bit more, that's going to help you to make sure that you get those two things. Okay. Okay. So let me see what time it is. Erin, do you want me to stop now for questions, or should I answer questions that we have?
We've got some good questions coming in the chat, okay, but I think we could breeze through them. So maybe a couple minutes more and then we'll shift to the chat.
Sure, great. So let's talk a bit about vegetarianism, simply because I've been alluding to it a lot. Most of you guys are probably aware of what it is. You're restricting your diet to foods of plant origin. We'll talk about the different kind of levels, if you will, of vegetarianism as well. Lots of reasons people do this: health benefits, ecological reasons. There's so much now about the impact of animal-based foods on the environment. So I think that's been a big driver of people adopting vegetarian and vegan diets in the more recent past. But there's a lot of different reasons. So types of vegetarianism. We have a semi-vegetarian, and this is where a lot of people will start, is that they'll exclude red meat. And then maybe from there, it kind of progresses. Maybe it's red meat, and then it's poultry, and then it's fish, etc. Okay, but some people they just exclude red meat. Pesco-vegetarian or pescatarian. So whatever the prefix is here on these vegetarians, that is the animal-based food that person chooses to consume. Okay, so pesco is that person will consume fish, seafood, but they're not going to have any other meat, poultry, dairy, or eggs. Lacto and ovo. So lacto, like lactose from dairy. This person will consume dairy, no meat, poultry, eggs, or fish. Ovo for eggs means that person will consume eggs, but they're going to exclude meat, poultry, dairy, and fish. Lacto-ovo, this person will consume both dairy and eggs and exclude the other animal-based products. And then someone who's vegan is going to consume no animal-based products. And this oftentimes really transfers into the lifestyle as well. So someone who's a vegan may not choose to wear leather. They may not, even have leather in their home in terms of their furniture, that type of thing. You can get vegan shoes, like Simple, I think, and Tom's have vegan shoes. So there's definitely a bit of and I'm not saying that others, other levels of vegetarianism wouldn't do this as well, but we see it more commonly with someone who's vegan, where that choice isn't just about the diet, it's about their entire lifestyle. So, and it makes sense. They're very concerned, in a lot of cases about animal welfare, that type of thing. So they're going to extend that into the rest of their lifestyle as well. So there's a lot of different kind of levels, if you will, of vegetarianism. As we become more restrictive and move down this list, it's more difficult to get some of these nutrients simply because you're eating less of those foods, but you can still get those nutrients. You just have to work harder. That's all there is to it. So that's why some people kind of make their way down this list over time. And that usually makes it a little bit easier. But some people just jump in and they go vegan and they figure it out. That being said, there are some people that I've talked to where it's not a good looking diet, and we have to work on that. So why would someone choose in a health perspective to go with vegetarianism? Typically, we see lower intake of fat and calories, increased risk of overweight and obesity, which obviously is a problem in the U.S. and really worldwide. F/V is fruit and vegetables. What I always say is eat more plants. Eat more plants, eat more plants. Most people can stand to eat more plants, especially fruits and vegetables. You're going to get more antioxidants. That's going to reduce risk for heart disease, cardiovascular disease. That's what the CVD is. Typically lower saturated fat intake, because saturated fat is typically found more in animal-based foods. Lower blood pressure, because typically we're going to see less sodium intake, more potassium because of more fruit and vegetable intake. Some types of cancer, especially colon cancer, we see a reduced risk. Typically, we see fewer digestive problems, fewer problems with the kidneys. So these are all great benefits. But one thing I want to ask you guys is, if someone is consuming a vegetarian diet, are these benefits guaranteed? If you're just eating plant-based foods, are you automatically going to get all these benefits? Nope, I'm getting all
Seeing
the
lots of no's come in. Yeah.
yes. So, and you guys are right? It depends on what you eat. Is exactly, Melissa. So, give me some ideas of which vegetarian foods would not be healthy choices, because they're out there, right? Anything you guys can think of. Fried Oreos, yes, yes. French fries, candy, things that are highly processed, right? Right. Yeah, I mean, you guys are right on it. So there's a lot of, like I mentioned, with some of these, the plant-based meats and stuff, I think they're highly processed foods. So you need to make these things. Yeah, anything with sugar, lots of things that certainly could be vegetarian or vegan that we really don't, shouldn't be consuming on a regular basis. So yeah, I mean, these are great points you guys are making. Sometimes there's no protein in there, and then you're not getting filled up as easily, right? Because protein can help us to feel more full. So you guys are on it. I like it. So as I've mentioned, vegetarians, vegans, they just have to plan a balanced and adequate diet. It's entirely possible to eat a healthy diet, but you've got to do a little bit more work. But once that work is put in, it's a lot easier, right? Protein intake could be a concern, certainly. If someone is only getting their protein from one source, they may not be getting all those essential amino acids. Add some variety. That's really going to help. Soy products, controversial, but a moderate intake can be an excellent protein source because it's acting like an animal protein. And then there are some vitamins and minerals that vegetarian diets can be low in. B12 is probably the biggest concern. I mean, there are some foods that you can add in, like nutritional yeast, that type of thing, to get some more of those B vitamins. A lot of the more processed vegetarian foods will have a lot of these vitamins and minerals added because they understand, like, okay, these individuals may not be getting enough of these. Iron and zinc are going to be, more prevalent in red meat, but you can certainly get them in some plant-based foods. Calcium, of course, we know is going to be in dairy, but you can get it in some leafy greens. Vitamin D, well, we live in Colorado, thankfully. So between mid-March and mid-October, you go outside, get some sunshine. Don't get too much, but you'll get your vitamin D. Usually 10 minutes a day on your face or your hands is going to be enough. And then some of those B vitamins. So yes, nutritional yeast to your popcorn is really good. I agree, Esther. All right. What time do we have? 1:45. Do you guys want to play Is It Vegan, or should we go to questions?
We've got, keep going there, saying.
Okay, so I've got 2 of these foods are vegan. The rest are not. So I'm going to give you guys a minute to look at that. Think about which ones you think might be vegan. And then also the ones that are not vegan, why are they not vegan? What is the ingredient or thing in there that would make it be not vegan? So I'll give you a minute. And look at my timer here. You guys can absorb that, and we'll come back and you guys can Oh, you guys are already giving answers here. I'm seeing a lot of good answers. Ooh, Elizabeth, good thought. Okay. Oreo cookies, are they vegan? They are vegan. Vegans rejoice, right? Jello, I've seen a lot of people saying Jello is not vegan. What's in there that's not vegan? Yes, the gelatin. Where does the gelatin come from? Joints, hides, yes, piggies. Yeah, it comes from animals. Typically like hooves and joints and connective tissue, that type of thing. Marshmallows, are they vegan? Nope. What's in there? Yep, gelatin again. So same story there. Orange juice with calcium and vitamin D added. A lot of orange juices have that now because they want to look like milk, right? Is that vegan? Elizabeth has got it. She's got the vitamin D. She's suspect. Anyone know where that vitamin D is coming from that makes this not vegan? Lanolin. Where do we get lanolin? From sheep. So some of these would be a much more strict, like someone's like, well, the orange juice itself without calcium and or without the vitamin D added would be vegan, but um, yeah, so it is considered to be not vegan because of the presence of lanolin. Table sugar, vegan, not vegan, and this is a picky one. Yeah, I'm getting some not vegans. There's bone char. So the way that some sugar is processed, and it varies with different sugars, so you would want to research your company or the place where it's being made. But bone char can be used to make and process that sugar. So that again, that's a pretty strict, picky one. What about Ritz crackers? Vegan? Got some no's. They are vegan. That buttery taste is not butter. So Worcestershire sauce, a lot of you guys have answered that already. Probably a better known one. It has anchovies. So if someone is not wanting to consume little fishies, you would not be consuming Worcestershire sauce. So that means that the Minute Maid ruby red grapefruit juice is not vegan. What is there? What is in there that makes it not vegan? The sugar, possibly, yes, but there's something else. Oh, Noel, good idea. Good thought on honey too. That's not it either, but honey is something that some people forget about, right? Coming from these. Coloring, yes. So there's something called cochineal extract, and you may see this on the ingredient list of things that have some red color to them. Anyone know where that comes from? Yes, little beetle, little beetle. So um, personally is probably redder than red number whatever, right? Because it's a natural source. But some people are like, I don't want the bugs in my juice or in my red coloring. So that's just kind of some fun. Is it vegan things? No, also is gross. Yeah. So that's I have more things on supplements and stuff, but I think we should probably do questions, right?
Wow, so great, Nicole. Thank you. I'm going to go back a little bit if it's all right in our chat because some things were coming in pretty early, and I'll try and skip over some of the comments that were direct questions that you were soliciting answers from the audience.
Sure.
But Noelle asked pretty early, would a 3 to 4 times per week of a HIIT workout be considered recreational?
That's a good question. Well, I would say it depends on the duration. So say that you're doing it for like a HIIT workout is intense, right? You're going and you're resting for a little bit and going again. I would say it'd probably be a little bit more than recreational. So bump it up maybe a little bit over 1 gram per kilogram. If you want to do that, maybe 1.2 would probably be an appropriate amount.
Okay, cool. And Jen was kind of thinking about protein in white beans, and the question emerged, can we get too much protein?
Yeah, really good question. So you can. I mean, you get too much of anything, right? Most people aren't going to be at risk of too much protein intake. But the people that we want to be concerned about are those with kidney issues because kidneys have to process the nitrogen that is part of protein. We've got to get rid of that nitrogen out of the body if we don't use it. So for most individuals in the ranges I'm talking about, it's probably not going to be too much of a concern. If there's kidney issues, that's a whole other kind of can of worms to open. But for most people, especially even if someone's doing paleo or keto diet, which tend to be higher protein, most people are doing okay with that.
All right, we've got a comment/question from Melissa. If you are aiming to eat more low carb, high protein diet, you should assume a higher amount in protein than the standard recommendation in order to still ensure your needs from protein, as well as the energy caloric needed, are all met, correct? Right? As we can still swap some fat carbs for protein as long as we're getting enough protein.
Yes. So good question. Yeah, I mean, that's why I say there's no perfect diet for everybody. Everybody's going to be a little bit different. If you're trying to eat more protein, you're probably going to be getting in those upper numbers that we've been talking about, right? As far as per kilogram. So yeah, you can always swap out fat or carbohydrate based on your needs for protein. So sometimes people want to be, you know, maintaining their muscle mass and then trying to lose weight, right? So then we would amp up the protein, reduce calories, but amp up the protein. So that's a good example of maybe what you're talking about, Melissa. It's like, yeah, we can definitely have more protein in there. And the thing is, for some people, the balance needs to be more carbohydrate because they're too fatigued without enough carbohydrate. Some people don't need as much carbohydrate. That could be the carbohydrate talk. But so balancing, like you're saying, subbing those out, swapping those out is a great thing to be aware of because they're still getting energy from those, but you can do it as your body needs for sure.
Just a little more nuanced along this thread, Catherine asks, is there a limit to the amount of protein your body can process in one meal?
Yeah, so really good question. So in general, like, and usually I talk about this in terms of athletes because athletes are interested in how much protein can I get right after exercise, right? Typically, so in that setting after exercise or in a meal, what we recommend is like 25-ish to maybe 35 grams of protein per meal, and then spread that throughout the day. So this is a great question, and I should have covered this, that we don't want to get all of our protein at once because what will happen in some cases is that excess protein will get used for energy. And like I said at the beginning of the talk, we want to reserve protein for all those other things. So getting, 25, 35 grams of protein per meal is a good place to be. If you get more than that, it's okay, but you may not be using it for all those functions that I talked about.
So, Stephanie asks, how well are whole chia seeds digested?
Yeah, good question. So we can kind of lump in here flax seeds too. Um, I know for flax seeds, they've done studies and they find that like a toasted or roasted flax seed is going to be better digested and absorbed simply because they're these tiny little things and there's a lot, you got to do a lot to them. Similar thing with chia seeds. And one thing I've seen is, try to chew them very well because, chia seeds, if we've got it in like a drink or whatever, those can just slide right down, right? Or in your yogurt or something like that. Try to chew them as well. I don't know if there's any data on toasting or roasting them. I haven't seen it if there is. But again, yeah, there's definitely gonna be some that don't get digested for sure, simply because they're tough to digest. But the more that you chew them, or if you're going to toast them, especially with flax seeds, that's going to be helpful.
Awesome. Yeah, right along the same lines, Kevin says, I've heard that our bodies don't absorb more than 20 to 25 grams of protein per meal. So we need to space out the protein consumption throughout the
Yes,
day, up to
absolutely.
5 times to get 100 to 125 grams.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And then Kylie asks,
that's,
I'm sorry.
no, go ahead.
Kylie asks, are there optimal times to eat protein?
Good question. And if you're, especially for athletes, if you're interested in maintaining muscle mass, building muscle mass, it's really important to get some protein right after your workout, 25-ish grams. And then another thing that almost anyone can do is athletes or someone who's just looking to maintain or build muscle mass is get some protein right before you go to bed. And that would be casein, which is it's milk based, so it's animal based, but a casein protein would be a good option, getting about 40 grams, because then your body can use that protein all night while you're sleeping. It'll use that to repair things, build things, etc. The protein right after exercise would be whey, which is another milk-based protein. You could also do soy. So there's good timing in terms of that, but otherwise, like I think Kevin said, spreading it throughout the day, even amounts throughout the day, is going to be the best thing for most people to do.
Awesome. Patty asks, is there a difference in rare or fully cooked meat in as far as benefits?
As far as like protein, I mean, the more you cook something, you're breaking it down, you're breaking those proteins down. So you may actually, what was that? I thought I heard something. Okay. So a more cooked food will have more breakdown of the proteins. You're essentially kind of jump starting that digestion. You're breaking down those amino acids into those proteins into single amino acids. So there could be a little bit of a difference, but it's probably not an exceedingly large amount of a difference between the two.
Nicole, you're doing awesome with this speed round. Are you up for a couple more?
Sure, we can do it.
Okay. Melissa, okay, it sounds like if you're on keto, you can use higher than 35 grams of protein per meal, because if keto, you use extra protein as an energy source as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question, Melissa. And I don't know that I would go, I mean, you could go higher than that because you're right, you're going to be using more protein for energy, but also with keto, you're using a lot more fat for energy. Typically just because you're not giving yourself as much carbohydrate. So I would probably still stick around 35 or so. If you do go above that, yeah, you're probably going to use some of that protein, those amino acids for energy. And it's not going to be detrimental. So it's probably okay to do that. But again, spreading it throughout the day is a good thing.
Cool, thank you. Catherine asks, as a follow-up, is it possible to get enough protein with intermittent fasting, which restricts eating to an 8-hour window per day, or some more restrictive versions which restrict eating to a 4-hour window?
Yeah, another good question. You guys have great questions. It is more difficult. I mean, that's just especially the 4-hour window. That would be really difficult to get enough. But again, if you're eating meat, you could maybe do that because you can get those dense source of proteins. You would really need to plan that out and try to be getting enough protein. My assumption, and this maybe is not correct, is that if someone's doing like a 4-hour window, they're maybe looking at weight loss in addition to longevity stuff. But if you're looking at weight loss, you probably need less calories, less protein anyway. It would be a challenge, but 8-hour window, you could do it. 4-hour window would be a challenge, and it would definitely need some planning.
Awesome. We have one more question. We're just about at time. Kevin asked, as we increase our protein consumption, do we have to be mindful of not also increasing our fat consumption above 30% of our daily caloric intake? So many high protein foods also have high fat content.
Yeah, really great question. And I'm saying really great question, but these are really good questions, you guys. Yeah, so we do want to be nutrients, macronutrients, carbohydrate, protein, and fat don't exist by themselves in foods typically. Usually it's a combination, right? So absolutely we want to be looking at your protein consumption. How much fat are we getting with that? The great thing is if you're consuming plant-based proteins and getting fat, those plant-based fats are typically unsaturated fats. Those are considered to be healthy fats, right? So they're going to help with your cholesterol levels, et cetera. The fats that we find in animal-based foods, which will have protein as well, those are going to be more saturated, majority saturated. So they are going to be a little bit more unhealthy. So depending on what type of proteins you're consuming, animal versus plant, you would want to watch that. Either way, watch it, but especially with animal-based, yes.
Awesome. We did have one question in the chat. It looks like it was already answered, and I want to be mindful that we are at the end of the hour. You've gotten a lot of love coming your way in the chat. So in an effort just to wrap things up, let's all give Nicole a round of applause for this great information that is directly applicable to our wellness. Super grateful. It sounds like we could have gone on and on, so maybe we'll consider round 2, 3, or 4 and get all those nutrients covered. But
yeah,
very grateful.
definitely.
The recording will
Thank
be,
you guys for coming.
Awesome.
all right. Thanks everybody. Nicole, big bow of gratitude. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.